So this is Team San Francisco, and my name's Julia Bershers, and I am the Street Parks Director at the San Francisco Parks Alliance.
I'm Sahidi Karampudi. I'm the Park Partner and Project Manager at Parks Alliance.
I'm Sonia Suresh. I'm the Program Associate at the Parks Alliance.
I'm Christine Carr. I'm the Project Manager for the Shared Schoolyard Project, San Francisco.
San Francisco has some very unique problems and issues. It's a really, really dense city. Families are leaving. There's a lot of tension between new residents and old residents, and there's a huge income gap. The median household income is a little over $73,000, and the national household income is $53,000. The median price of homes is almost $1 million. And we have, yeah, we know. We have 5,685 acres of open space. And you can see how our density compares to New York. I feel like people don't usually realize that San Francisco is so small and so dense. As a previous slide said, it's only 7 by 7 miles.
So for our bold goal, we will work to ensure every San Franciscan has access to open space and recreation within a quarter-mile walking distance from their home by December 2020.
And, our action item has to do with money and economics because that's what's going on in our city. We have huge economic forces. We have a lot of companies and new industries coming to the city, which is great, but that's also really bringing up the tension and the prices of property values. So we want to identify and secure funding for the construction, renovation, and/or activation of 25 play spaces in the next 3 years. So that's our big idea.
So one of the big action items is the Blue Greenway program, which is a program that the Parks Alliance spearheads. And it's basically building a connection of trails and parks along the southeastern waterfront in San Francisco. And that's an area of the city that's been historically low income, underserved, and is now attracting a lot of new families. There's a lot of big development going on in that part of the city. And so the Parks Alliance is working to create a master plan for the Blue Greenway and hopefully make it a place for families to enjoy the waterfront and have access to recreation.
One of the ways that we found creatively to expand our play space has been through the Shared Schoolyard Project. About 3 years ago, Mayor Lee and one of our supervisors, Mark Farrell, decided that this was going to become a priority. Unlike Durham, or the reverse, all of our 100 schoolyards were locked on the weekends. No access to anyone in the community. So they decided that they were going to start a project, create the incentives, and develop a team that would get those schoolyards open on the weekends. To date, we've been in production, I guess is the word, for about 3 years, and we have 32 schoolyards open on the weekends. We do that year-round. They're open from approximately 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoons, and we use a lot of city resources for that. It is a huge priority. We are very public-private funded, both through the city. We've received a grant from Kaboom. And we have private funds available to us as well. We have 100,000 school-age kids, and our goal is over the next, till 2020, to have all 100 school sites open, which would make every child in San Francisco have accessible walking distance to a school play yard.
So we also are looking for creative partnerships, and that's really engaging with all our city departments. I'm the director of the Street Parks program, and that's a program we have a partnership with the Department of Public Works. And this program enables and assists community members in greening and activating blighted parcels. So these are vacant lots, areas along stairways, even street medians. They're the little spaces in between places. Some of them are small, but for San Francisco, every little bit counts. So they're really transforming these spaces into habitat, community gathering spaces, and in some cases playgrounds. And then also partnering with the Unified School District, of course. Also, excuse me, working with our planning department. We have a program to activate plazas. We have Sunday streets where we close streets down to activate those spaces. And then, of course, it's really about, bringing in resources. So engaging with all the new firms coming into town and letting them know if they want a vibrant city where their employees and their families can live and thrive, we need our public spaces. So engaging them, and then also working to increase public funding. So we passed a parks bond 2 years ago, and that was $195 million for our parks. So we're going to continue to do more of that, advocating for that public funding as well.
So hopefully we will go from this, which is dilapidated playground scenes, to this, which is Helen Diller Playground in Dolores Park, which is kind of the premier flagship playground in San Francisco. And go Giants.
Thank you. Do you have a specific question for the panelists?
So our question would be, given that we have such an issue with scarcity of land, 7 by 7 miles, the land that's there is extremely expensive, and there's a lot of competing demands for land use. So given that, and those big financial economic forces coming down, how should we best work to preserve and expand our green open space in our city?
Okay. I was thinking, Stockton, you might have a perspective on this.
Happy to start. We probably all have thoughts. Great presentation. So I think that challenge that you described, which is maybe more unique to San Francisco than some of the other cities here today, about just the rising income, the small footprint that you have, is actually your chance to leverage it, because real estate is only going to get more and more valuable in San Francisco. And so I think the value capture strategies that many cities, including Chicago, have successfully tapped to leverage private investment in parks and open spaces can absolutely be part of your strategy. I absolutely know that there are other policy demands on that same constituency, including for more affordable housing and for better transit, but you guys ought to be in that conversation if you're not already. I also would say that that bond issue sounds like a big deal. That's a lot of money, even understanding the cost of infrastructure and cost of living in San Francisco. Whatever the political and organizing tactics that were used to get the citizenry to support that, I think could easily be, if they're not already, utilized by you guys and to sort of continue that momentum. You may have a challenge articulating the need, because 190 million sounds like a lot of money, but I think you've painted a compelling picture here for what it could achieve.
Brian?
I just really wanted to quickly address what you said. So we didn't actually explain what Parks Alliance is. We're a nonprofit, and we have over 100 park partner groups. So those are like friends of groups, and we do fundraising. We do a lot of fundraising for all of them. So that's mostly what we do. We leverage our partnerships to raise money, and we work with the city departments to renovate or build new parks. Right, Shared Schoolyards it's a fiscally sponsored project of ours.
Great presentation. So I lived in San Francisco for over a decade, and I'm still recovering from the how much I spent on housing then. But two thoughts. I mean, one is, I think this was mentioned, but part of what's contributing to the market pressures are all of these hot tech companies and their employees. And I've seen recently Google actually investing in homelessness issues in San Francisco, essentially kind of out of a responsibility for what's happened in the market, and actually even paying attention to the perception that Google employees are not nice to homeless people. So there's a lot of money, but also I think some responsive corporate citizenry, which I think you tapped into, could be perhaps more. The other one is just from a real estate strategy. There are so few development opportunities that there are places like Asia where they have actually repurposed or done multi-purpose indoor spaces as play opportunities in some ways to kind of eke out anywhere you can space that could be used at some moment during the day for play or recreation.
Great. Dr. Lee?
coming from, I guess, another dense place, right? Where there's a lot of places that have been built out, and so you're thinking about creative spaces, right? So one of the things, we heard about play streets. New York has play streets as well. So thinking about streets that might not be as busy, that are near where children are, like schools, where a lot of day camps might be, et cetera, and whether you might partner with schools and community groups to actually run play streets, right? And there's a city component to that in terms of the city agency coordinations that need to occur for a whole permitting process for play streets. That's one. The other is privately owned public spaces, right? And whether there are opportunities for that in all areas of the city. So on business sites where there might be outdoor areas that could be repurposed as well. Important to think about guidelines that come along with that, so that those are not, and zoning incentives are an important piece of building that out. So I think partnering with planning departments are really important for that. But thinking also about guidelines that what those spaces are used for, how they're designed, so that you're not giving zoning incentives for dead spaces, right? The other is thinking about roof infrastructure, right? And what can be done to incentivize or reduce barriers to creation of infrastructure using roof space. So whether it's easing of code requirements for building out a green roof, or in new buildings and major renovations, there might be opportunities, right? And then finally, I think thinking about indoor spaces as well, right? Including, so for example, the School Construction Authority in New York, now one of the policies is not building necessarily an auditorium and a gym, but a gymatorium and a gym, which can functionally double, physical education and physical activity spaces in schools. But you're also thinking about like housing from high-end to residential, affordable residential buildings, and what are you doing around play spaces and active spaces for adults and children, both indoors and outdoors on the site. Very frequently there's, even in multi-residential housing, there is outdoor space that's available, but it's completely programmed passively, only for like sitting and for lawn, right? So how to rethink those spaces. Sorry it took so long.
No.
So
That was great.
I just wanted to say for the play streets, we're actually launching that in March 2015. So, and then we have over 100 popos in San Francisco. Yeah.
That's great. Can I get a round of applause for the team from San Francisco?